there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a book review and discussion for Dust by Hugh Howey. But before I go ahead and get on into the review, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new content. I post new bookish videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box below for links to my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning book giveaways, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Amazon shop. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to discuss much about this book without spoiling things for book 1, Wool, and book 2, Shift. So if you have not already read those, you might want to skip over this review, or if you don't care to get spoiled, then go ahead and keep on listening. I'm going to start out with summarizing what happened in this book, and then go into a discussion about things that I liked, things that I didn't like, some things that I didn't understand or needed more information from. And then I'm going to talk about some of the themes that I gathered from this book or the series as a whole, and then I'll give the book an overall rating. In Dust, we are back in the current timeline that we were in the book Wool. If you watched my review of Shift, I talked about how this was kind of a prequel novel where we learn the origins of the silo, the people that were involved, and how they are keeping this current world system under control. And that timeline actually converges with the current timeline, and that's where we are in book 3. So Donald, who we met in book 2, we learned that he was a congressman who had a lot to do with the building of these silos. And we learned that there were multiple silos, about 50, and silo 1 is the control center. So they are able to monitor all of the other silos, and their whole idea was to reset humanity, to kill off the entire global population, to keep a certain amount of people underground, to monitor how these people lived, thrive, how they reacted to the control that they were being put under. And then eventually only one of those silos would survive, and those people are the ones that are going to be repopulating the earth. So that was the whole entire goal behind Senator Thurman and the people that were working with him. And what we learned in book 2 is that the original founders of the silos are still alive, even though it's been hundreds of years, because they have perfected the technology of cryogenically freezing people, as well as nanomedicine or nanotechnology. So the people that are being frozen and are in these pods are getting these nanobots that are keeping them healthy and able to be woken up at different intervals and then put back to sleep. But in order to keep control over the 50 silos, in addition to the people in Silo 1, the people that knew the origins of this whole entire plan, this global reset, they are given this drug that makes them forget their past, who they were. And we see that in book 2 as Donald wakes up and he thinks his name is Troy. He calls himself Troy. He has no recollection that he is Donald, that he was a congressman, that he helped literally design the silo he was living in. He had no recollection of that whatsoever until he stopped taking the medicine to make him forget, the pills. Where we start off in Dust is Donald wakes up for his next shift, but people think that he is Senator Thurman. And what we learn is that Senator Thurman's daughter, Anna, who was awake during this time, and just a fun fact, all of the women in Silo 1 are being kept asleep in these pods, frozen with these nanobots keeping them healthy. So these women are not woken up at all. So Anna actually is the only woman awake at a certain time in Silo 1, and she starts to realize that what her father's doing is completely wrong and not ethical. So she tampers with the database and ends up switching the profiles of Donald and Senator Thurman so that when Donald is awoken, people think that he's the senator. They think that he is the one that is running the silo, and he essentially has all the power. So he decides to kill Senator Thurman in his sleep and essentially take over Thurman's identity. So he goes to his cryopod and he shoots him, but unbeknownst to Donald, the bullet does not kill him. So this attempted murder is discovered and Thurman is taken to medical bay. He survives. So once Senator Thurman, the antagonist, is well enough, he figures out what happens and he finds Donald and he arrests him. And this whole time, while Donald has been masquerading as Senator Thurman, he has been communicating with Juliet in Silo 18. He has been trying to help them, to tell them the truth with the limited knowledge that he has. He has been talking to Lucas, Juliet's lover. He has been trying to help these people. Juliet, because of everything that she's been through, is very, very wary of Donald and anyone in Silo 1. She does not trust them at all. In fact, she even threatens to find a way to get to Silo 1 and kill all of them. She knows that they are responsible for the state of the world, the things that they have been through, and she really has no reason to trust them. While Donald is awake and masquerading as Senator Thurman, he decides to wake up his sister Charlotte. So like I said, there are no women awake in the silo other than Anna, and Donald ends up killing Anna too. So Charlotte is the only woman, and Donald awakes her for a couple reasons. I think that number one, he just was lonely. He wanted someone that he loved. He wanted his family, but he also wanted Charlotte's help because he knew that Charlotte would help do the right thing. And what we learned in book 2 is that Charlotte was in the military. She was a drone pilot. So Donald has this idea that if they can send out a drone out of Silo 1 into the real world with a camera, they will be able to see the actual state of the world and if it was habitable or not. So Charlotte actually is able to do this. They're able to send a drone out and they see that there is green and that Earth is thriving once you get past the silos. So Donald comes up with this idea for them to get a drone that can carry a couple of them out of Silo 1 so that they can essentially escape. And that is the goal that they are working towards until Donald gets arrested once Thurman is rehabilitated. And during this time, Charlotte and Donald recruit a security officer named Darcy. So they do have one ally in the silo. And it's funny because Darcy actually stops taking his medication. And at one point in the book, he says, "I remember who I am." And we see once again that the people in power, Senator Thurman and the people that work with him, are trying to keep even the people in Silo 1 under control and oppressed through medication. Once Senator Thurman is able to arrest Donald, he has this sole goal to eradicate Silo 18, Juliet's silo. He sees her and her ambitions as a threat to everything that he has been working towards these last couple hundred years. So once he's able to, gives the command to gas the entire silo. And this poisonous gas is how a lot of the other silos that have been rebellious have been put down. And the only people to survive were a couple of hundred people that were mostly down in the bottom of the silo. And what Juliet had been working on was a way to connect Silo 17 and 18 through a digger that she found underground. And she was actually able to create this tunnel. So the people of Silo 18 were able to barricade and keep the poisonous gas from reaching that far down. They went through the tunnel into Tunnel 17, which is the silo that Juliet discovered in Wool, book 1. And that's where she came across Jimmy, or Solo, he has 2 names, and the children that have survived and were living there. So Juliet and the couple hundred people that survived inhabit Silo 17. So while Juliet is trying to figure out how to help her people, she comes across these schematics that lead her to this digger. And this digger has like these instructions or these programs to dig away up top to this bunker that Charlotte calls Seed. And at this bunker, there are a ton of supplies for civilization to begin rebuilding itself. My thinking is that whatever silo that was supposed to survive to the end, this would be what they needed to get that restart. And Juliet found it through reading these schematics. But they didn't use the digger. She ended up going outside, and a bunch of people from her silo followed her outside, and they eventually found that Earth was indeed cleansed. It had healed itself. There was a thriving ecosystem. There were animals. There was blue skies, clouds, trees, and they found this bunker that had supplies as well as seeds, which is why it was called Seed, for them to plant and grow crops. In the meantime, Donald ends up escaping Senator Thurman's prison with the help of Darcy. And what they had planned is that for Charlotte and Darcy to escape on these drones from Silo 1, while Donald brings down Silo 1, which is the complete control center of this entire world. What ends up happening is that Charlotte is able to escape on the drone, and then Donald takes it on himself to bomb Silo 1 from the inside, killing himself, obviously, and everybody inside. And when Charlotte Charlotte is landed safely, she ends up intercepting Juliet and joins the survivors. So that is what happened in Dust. So we definitely had a good ending. I was pleased with the ending. Now I'm just going to touch on some discussion type things. This is really in no order. They're just some things that I came across as I was reading, some ideas I had that I wanted to discuss with you guys. So the first thing is Donald. So I really enjoyed following both Donald and Juliet's character arc, but Donald especially, because I feel like that he was trying to do the right thing. He was a bit naive, in my opinion, and ignorant in book 2. He was elected to Congress with the help of Senator Thurman. He was doing what he was asked to do because he thought it was the right thing to do. He put a lot of trust in his superior, someone that he knew his whole life and he really thought was a good leader. And Senator Thurman just completely exploited that. And I really liked seeing Donald's convictions over the course of the book or the series, and especially how that led him to his final act of self-sacrifice, because it just showed that he was trying to atone for the wrongs that he had done. Now, here's the thing that I didn't like so much about that scene where Donald sets off the bomb is, yes, you are killing the antagonists, which is Thurman and all the people that work for him, but what about all the people in Silo 1 that were innocent? So like I said, all of the women, the wives and sisters of these men that were working these shifts were frozen and they died, but they weren't guilty. And then you also have people that had been given the medication and didn't have their memories and were just following orders, and they were killed. And they might have chosen to help Donald and do the right thing if they had their memories. So I wasn't too thrilled about bringing down the entire silo because I feel like a lot of innocent people were killed. And in a world where the entire global population had pretty much been decimated a couple hundred years ago, I feel like you probably want to keep as many people alive as possible. And a lot of this book just surrounded the idea of, you know, how people should have the right to choose how they want to live, how they should have the right to choose whether they live or die. And Donald just kills everybody in Silo 1. So while I appreciated his recognition of the wrongs that he did, I wasn't too thrilled that he killed everybody in the silo. I feel like maybe there could have been a better written scene where he just killed Thurman. But if you think about it, it's kind of like an epic scene, especially in the TV show where the bomb just like blows up, you know, Silo 1 and it all comes crumbling down. So I feel like in that regard, it was kind of a cool scene, but just looking at it from a different perspective, wasn't a huge fan of it. Another thing that I found kind of interesting is Donald comes across this computer report where this computer is calculating the odds of survival for each one of the silos based on the data that has been inputted about the people who have lived in the silo over the years, the current people, how they're acting, what they do, you know, all this data that is being collected on people. This computer is spitting out these statistics about which one is going to survive. And the one that has the highest chance of survival is the one that will be the one to survive. And Donald is kind of questioning, like, how can a computer really gauge human nature? Because humans, yes, we are predictable in a certain way, but at times we are completely unpredictable. So he had a lot of qualms with survival of a human race being based on like a computer calculation. And, you know, I completely agree with that. I thought it was an interesting scene that Hugh Howey put in there, and it kind of made me think. Now I just want to touch on some things about the world that we learned in book 3, and some of it wasn't explained in great detail, and a lot of this just might be me drawing inferences. But we learned that nanotechnology, like I said, is around. It's a thing in our world at this time. And we learned that nanotechnology, nanobots are being, I guess, filtered into these different silos from Silo 1. And they actually are helping to heal people, to make them survive longer, to make them healthier. And there's a scene where Lucas is saying to Juliet, hey, there used to be this scar on your arm and it's no longer there. And immediately I was like, well, she must have been healed by the nanotechnology, but when the heck did she come into contact with this nanotechnology? And then once the survivors of Silo 18 are in Silo 17, Hugh Howey makes a comment about how Solo or Jimmy and the kids have survived so long, you know, with limited resources in Silo 17 and are good and healthy. And once again, it makes you think, okay, did they have access to some of this nanotechnology that's supposed to be regenerative? And then the last clue was when Juliet in Wool, book 1, first enters Silo 17, she comes across all of these dead bodies. And what we know from Solo or Jimmy's story is that that rebellion happened decades ago. So all of those bodies should have been decayed, and a lot of them weren't decayed any more than they would have been if they've only been dead for like 2 weeks or so. And Juliet's father, who's a doctor, when they're trying to clear out the bodies so that the people can go outside in dust, he even says such. He says that, these people look like they've only been dead for 2 weeks. It can't be, 30, 40 years. So once again, Hugh Howey is hinting that this regenerative nanotechnology is somehow interspersed in their world, and it just wasn't clear exactly how or why. So I took it to be that Silo 1 wants the population, or the silo that eventually is going to survive, to be healthy and to be able to thrive in the world. So they've been filtering in nanobots into all of these 50 silos for the last couple hundred years. But then that didn't make sense why Juliet would go to Silo 17, come back, and her scar would be gone if this nanotechnology was being given to all the silos simultaneously. So there was a little bit of disconnect about that explanation. So I'm really not sure where Hugh Howey was going with that. If you guys have read this and have a different idea, just let me know. And what we also learn is that there is a dome of poisonous atmosphere, I guess, essentially covering where these 50 silos are. And it's created from these nanobots that are programmed to be dangerous. And once you get out of that dome, that is where you find the thriving, clean earth that is livable. And there was kind of an interesting conversation between Juliet and one of the people that was helping her. I can't remember who it was. That based on all of the supplies that they had remaining in their silo, it looks like the silo would only have enough provisions for another 250 years roughly. So then I immediately thought that the original founders of these silos, they wanted a certain time frame to pass before the people were able to venture outside again. So my thinking is that they put enough supplies in the silos for a couple of hundred years, a couple of generations. And then once those were spent, people would have no choice but to venture outside. And also that dome that's covering this area of 50 silos, those nanobots, from my inference, would be programmed to stop working in about 250 years. So it was my thinking that these people wanted to ensure that enough time passed so that any memories of previous generations, any memories of previous, inhabitants of the outside earth, any memories would be completely washed away from these people and they would be starting new. Another thing that I wish Hugh Howey would have touched on were the other silos. So we really only got information about a couple of silos that Donald, gave the order to shut down. We learned that a couple of them went dark, but there was speculation about whether they actually were dark or they were still existing, just not in communication with Silo 1. And I really would have liked if Hugh Howey would have told us which silos actually survived and which one had people in them and which ones didn't, because then it would gauge better, how big of a population would be repopulating Earth. And that wasn't touched on. So I was a little bit sad about that because I thought that would be really interesting. But then it is mentioned in the book how, these people should be given the choice of whether they want to remain underground, living and thriving, or if they want to come above ground or not. And once again, that theme of human choice and that everybody has a right to life was touched upon, and I appreciated that. So just touching on a couple of themes that I really liked in this book. Number one would be, exerting power over a population, controlling people through fear. We know that the video screens in the cafeteria only showed Earth as a wasteland. They were not telling the whole truth, that it actually was green and thriving beyond that. They were using fear tactics to control people to get them to do what they want to do. So I really enjoyed that theme. Another one was the importance of memories. And I read The Giver with my 7th graders every year, and that is a big theme in The Giver. And I really like it because I think it's really important. And I'm really glad that Hugh Howey included it in this series too. So you have him showing how if we don't have memories, then we are unable to learn from our experiences because we can't remember them. We're unable to grow as human beings. We're unable to gain wisdom to help us make better decisions and have discernment. And it kind of ties into history because history are memories. So if we don't have history, if we don't have memories, then we're unable to learn from our mistakes and we're just going to keep repeating those mistakes. All in all, Dust was a fabulous ending to the Silo series, and I ended up giving Dust 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, you guys, that is it for my review / discussion of Dust by Hugh Howey. Let me know in the comments if you've read this book and what you thought of it, and I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye!